He didn't even look up. That's the part nobody could explain afterward. When the two of them walked in, loud, deliberate, taking up space the way men do when they've never once paid a price for it, the old janitor just kept mopping. Slow, even strokes. The same rhythm he'd held for the past 20 minutes. Like they weren't there. Like the noise they carried into the room meant exactly nothing. That was the moment. Right there. That was when Kyle Mercer decided he had found his entertainment for the evening. Iron Ridge MMA had been Kyle's gym for 6 years. He'd built something real there, or at least, a version of real that looked convincing from the outside. Second-degree black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Regional amateur title, 2019. His photo was on the wall near the entrance, arm raised, mouth open mid-celebration. He made sure new members saw it. His brother Nate had 3 years less experience and twice the ego. Nate had never quite matched Kyle's record, which meant Nate had spent years building a compensation strategy, volume, aggression, the performance of dominance in spaces where it cost nothing. Together they were the gravitational center of that gym. Coaches deferred to them. Newer members orbited carefully. The air changed when they walked in. Kyle was 29. Nate was 26. They had never, in any meaningful sense, been held accountable for anything. That education was overdue. The janitor's name was Raymond Holt. He came in 3 evenings a week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, arriving at 8, after the last class cleared out, working through until 10. He was 61 years old, broad through the shoulders in the way men get when the muscle underneath has settled into something permanent. His hair was gray at the temples. His hands were large. He moved through the building with the deliberate efficiency of a man who understood exactly what the work required and had long since stopped wasting motion. The staff liked him. Not in the performative way people claim to like service workers, genuinely. Marcus at the front desk always had a coffee ready at 8. The head coach, a woman named Brianna, sometimes stayed late just to talk to him. Nobody could have explained precisely why, except that Raymond had the quality of making people feel that whatever room he was in was slightly more settled than it had been before. He had worked there for 14 months. In 14 months he had mentioned almost nothing about his life before. Kyle noticed him the way predators notice vulnerability, not through careful observation, but through instinct that had never once been tested against anything real. "Yo." Kyle dropped his bag near the mat edge and looked at Raymond. "You missed a spot." Raymond didn't respond. "Hey. Old man." Kyle said it louder. "I said you missed a spot." Raymond finished the stroke he was on. Looked up. Found Kyle's face across the room with the calm, unhurried focus of a man reading a street sign. "I heard you," he said. "Then why aren't you doing anything about it?" Raymond looked at the floor where Kyle was pointing. Then back at Kyle. "That's a shadow," he said. Nate burst out laughing. Not because it was funny, because laughing was his role in these moments, the laugh that gave Kyle permission to keep going. Kyle's expression shifted. The smile stayed but something behind it tightened. "You got a mouth on you for a janitor," he said. "I've got a mouth on me for a person," Raymond said. And returned to his work. The room had 3 other people in it. A teenager named Jordan, packing up his gear in the corner. A coach's assistant named Paul, wiping down the heavy bags. And Brianna, who had come back for her forgotten phone and was standing in the doorway to the office, very still, watching. None of them spoke. Kyle stepped onto the mat. He wasn't in his gear, still in street clothes, but he crossed onto the training surface with the ease of a man who considered it his property. "You know what this place is?" he said to Raymond's back. Raymond kept moving. "This is a fight gym. You know what we do here? We train. Real training. Not whatever you did, wherever it was you." He glanced at Nate, sharing the joke, "mopped floors before this." Raymond stopped. He stood with his back to Kyle for exactly 3 seconds. Then he turned around. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't shift his posture. He simply looked at Kyle Mercer with an expression that several people in that room would later struggle to describe, not anger, not amusement, not contempt. Something quieter than all of those things and somehow heavier. "You're standing on my clean floor," Raymond said. Kyle stared at him. Then he laughed. Long, deliberate. "Brianna." He called toward the office without breaking eye contact with Raymond. "You letting the help talk to members like this now?" Brianna didn't answer. That was the first signal Kyle missed. He came back Wednesday. He brought 3 other members with him this time, 2 training partners and a guy named Seth who filmed things on his phone and posted them with captions Kyle thought of as their content strategy. Raymond was in the back hallway when they arrived, restocking paper towels in the supply closet. Kyle found him there. Cornered, technically, though the word implies more fear than the geometry actually produced. "Round 2, Kyle said. Raymond closed the supply closet door. Turned around. Found himself facing 4 men in a narrow hallway, backlit from the main floor. He looked at all 4 of them. His expression didn't change. "You training tonight?" he asked. The question was genuine. Almost polite. "Nah," Kyle said. "Just came to see if you had any more smart remarks." "I don't," Raymond said. "I have a hallway to get through." Kyle didn't move. Seth raised his phone. "This is the part," Kyle said, addressing the camera with the practiced ease of a man who'd done this before, "where our guy here decides if he's going to be a problem." Raymond looked at the phone. Then at Kyle. Then at the phone again. Something moved behind his eyes, not fear, not calculation, something older than both of those things. A decision being made at a level beneath words. "Move the phone," he said quietly. Seth laughed. Kept filming. "Move the phone," Raymond said again. Same volume. Same tone. "Or what?" Kyle stepped closer. "Old man, you are a janitor in a fight gym. Do you understand what that means? We have 10 guys in here who could." He didn't finish the sentence. Because Raymond's hand came up, not fast, not aggressive, just precisely, and he redirected Seth's phone arm at the wrist, angling it down and away with a movement so controlled it barely qualified as contact. Seth's hand opened on reflex. The phone dropped. The hallway went silent. Kyle looked at the phone on the floor. Then at Raymond. Then he made the decision that defined the next several months of his life. He threw a punch. It was a good punch. Technically. Committed, right-handed, thrown by a man who had trained the movement thousands of times in a controlled environment against opponents who played by understood rules. Raymond wasn't playing by those rules. He wasn't playing by any rules that Kyle Mercer had ever encountered. What happened in the next 4 seconds was witnessed by 4 people and later described with the shared bewilderment of people trying to articulate something their vocabulary wasn't built for. The punch didn't connect. Raymond moved, not backward, not to the side, but inside the arc of the punch, eliminating the distance before the strike could develop power. His left hand controlled Kyle's punching arm at the elbow. His right forearm came across Kyle's chest, not hard, not dramatic, just positioned. A single step. A pivot. And Kyle Mercer, second-degree black belt, regional amateur champion, went into the hallway wall with enough force to bounce and enough control that nothing broke. Except his understanding of how the world worked. He slid to the floor. Nate moved. Raymond looked at him. Just looked. Nate stopped. The hallway was completely silent except for Kyle's breathing, which was the ragged, confused breathing of a man whose body has been educated in something his mind hasn't processed yet. Raymond reached down. Picked up the mop he'd leaned against the wall before any of this started. Hallways clean, he said. He walked past all four of them. What Raymond Holt had been, before the mop and the Tuesday evenings and the gray in his hair, was not something he'd ever offered up voluntarily. He had enlisted at 19. Had been identified, early, as someone whose particular combination of physical capability and psychological composure made him useful in specific ways. He had trained under 3 different disciplines over the following decade, not as hobby, not as sport, but as professional necessity. Krav Maga. Judo fundamentals. A close-quarters curriculum that doesn't have a name civilians would recognize. He had spent 22 years in service. He had left at 41 with a body that carried the record of what he'd done in the way old wood carries weather, not broken, just shaped by it. The janitor job had come through a veterans employment program. He'd taken it without hesitation. It paid modestly, it required no explaining, and it left his evenings quiet. He had not been in a physical altercation since leaving service. He had not needed to think about whether he still could. Now he knew. The footage existed. Seth's phone had kept recording after it hit the floor, angled upward, catching most of the hallway in frame. He hadn't posted it, some animal instinct overriding the content strategy reflex, but it existed, and that meant it traveled. Group chats. Then wider. Then a screenshot landed in a thread that included 2 members of Iron Ridge's coaching staff. Brianna watched it on her phone at 11 p.m., standing in her kitchen. She watched it 3 times. Then she sat down. She had known Raymond for 14 months. She had liked him, trusted him, given him a key to the supply room, saved him a parking spot near the side entrance without explaining why she'd done it. She had understood, in the intuitive way some people do, that there was more beneath the surface of this quiet man than he offered. She had not understood how much more. Kyle filed a complaint with the gym's ownership Friday morning. He used the word unprovoked. The owner, a man named Gerald who had built the gym from nothing over 15 years, sat across from Kyle in a folding chair and listened to the full account without interrupting. Gerald was 53. He had spent 6 years in the Marines before building his civilian life, and he had a particular sensitivity to the sound of a man lying about a physical encounter he'd lost. When Kyle finished, Gerald asked one question. "He just moved a phone?" Kyle hesitated. He grabbed Seth's. "He moved a phone," Gerald said again. "And then you threw a punch." Silence. Gerald looked at him for a long moment. "I've got the footage, Kyle." Kyle's jaw moved. "Your membership is suspended pending review," Gerald said. "Nate's too." He stood. "You can see yourselves out." The review took 4 days. On the 5th day, Gerald called Raymond into his office. Sat him down. Put a coffee in front of him. He didn't ask Raymond about the incident. He asked Raymond about his service. Raymond was quiet for a moment. Then he told him. Not everything, there were parts that still weren't his to tell, but enough. Gerald listened the way veterans listen to each other, without performance, without theatrical reaction, just absorption and recognition. When Raymond finished, Gerald nodded once. "Your position here is permanent," Gerald said. "Whatever that means to you. As long as you want it." Raymond looked at the coffee. "That's not necessary," he said. "No," Gerald agreed. "It's not." He pushed the coffee closer. "You've also been added to our staff safety training curriculum. If you're willing." Raymond considered this. "What would that involve?" he asked. "Showing our coaches what you just showed Kyle Mercer," Gerald said. "Except on purpose." Raymond almost smiled. "Not quite." "I can do that," he said. Kyle and Nate's suspension became permanent 3 weeks later, after 2 separate members came forward with accounts of prior incidents, smaller, less documented, but part of a pattern that Gerald had suspected and now had reason to address. The regional amateur title stayed on the wall. But Kyle's photo came down. Nobody announced it. Nobody made a statement. One Tuesday it was there and the following Thursday it wasn't, and Gerald had replaced it with a framed photograph of the gym's first graduating class from 1998. Kyle noticed when he drove past. He didn't stop. There was nothing to stop for. Raymond worked his Friday shift. 8 to 10, same as always. He moved through the building with the same unhurried efficiency, the floor near the entrance, the matte surface, the back hallway where 4 men had made a decision and been given an answer. Jordan, the teenager who'd been packing up his gear that first night, was finishing a late session with one of the assistant coaches. He passed Raymond on his way out. Stopped. "Hey," he said. "I saw what happened." Raymond looked at him. Jordan paused, searching for the word. "I just wanted to say. You know." Raymond held his gaze. "Go home safe," he said. Jordan nodded. Left. Raymond returned to the floor. Slow, even strokes. The same rhythm. The building quiet around him. The overhead lights steady. The night outside undemanding. A man at his work. Nothing more visible than that. Nothing less real than everything underneath it. He finished at 10 o'clock. Locked up. Drove home in the dark. If you've made it this far, if something in this story landed somewhere specific in your chest, you already understand what this channel is about. Men who built something real in silence. Men who don't explain themselves until explanation becomes unavoidable. Subscribe if that's the kind of story you want more of. The next one is already waiting.